The Venus-Uranus alignment building in the sky right now is one of the more catalytic configurations of this entire season, and its effects can move through your life with a speed that catches most people off guard precisely because the initial signal is so quiet. Pay attention today to the thoughts that arrive unexpectedly, to the feelings that do not match the ordinary texture of your day, to the message that comes in from somewhere you were not anticipating, the opportunity that presents itself without fitting the plan you were operating on, the sudden loss of interest in something you were convinced still mattered. These are not random. They are the Venus-Uranus energy doing exactly what it does, disrupting the settled picture of your life to show you what was underneath the settling. The shifts that begin today may feel small at first, a thought that crosses your mind and lingers longer than you expected, a conversation that goes in a direction you did not anticipate and leaves you with something you cannot quite put down, a realization that arrives without build-up, fully formed, that changes the way a situation looks to you. These are how timeline shifts begin, not with catastrophe or obvious upheaval, but with a single moment of clarity that makes it impossible to keep seeing things exactly the way you were seeing them before. To understand what is actually happening today, you need a clear picture of the two planetary forces in play and what their interaction actually produces in human experience. Venus governs your relationship to desire and value, what you want, who you want it with, what you consider worth your time and energy and attention. Venus rules romantic relationships, but its domain extends further than that. It governs your sense of what makes life worth living, what aesthetic and emotional experiences you are drawn toward, what you find beautiful and what you find depleting. When Venus is active in your chart or in the broader sky, questions about worth and desire and the quality of your connections come to the foreground. You find yourself reassessing what you are investing in and whether the investment is producing what you genuinely need. Uranus is categorically different in its operation. Where Venus is soft and draws you toward what is appealing, Uranus is disruptive and breaks open what has become too settled. Uranus governs liberation, sudden awakening, the kind of change that arrives without warning and rearranges the picture faster than deliberate planning ever could. Uranus does not wait for you to be ready. It does not ask permission. When Uranus activates a configuration, it introduces an element of the unexpected that the existing structure cannot simply absorb and continue as before. Something has to shift. Something that was fixed becomes fluid. Something that was assumed becomes questionable. When Venus and Uranus interact, when these two very different energies come into direct contact in the sky, the specific result is disruption in the domain of desire and relationship and personal value. The things you thought you wanted become suddenly less certain. The relationships you had settled into reveal new dimensions, either by deepening unexpectedly or by showing you, with sudden clarity, the mismatch you had been managing around. The direction you were heading in your life, the choices you had made about how to spend your time and with whom, all of this comes under a kind of energetic review that is not gradual or academic. It is immediate. It is felt, and it tends to produce a quality of knowing that bypasses the usual deliberation process. The twist in the Venus-Uranus alignment that most people do not anticipate is that Uranus does not always arrive as chaos. The word disruption suggests external upheaval, things falling apart, circumstances forcing change on you from the outside. Sometimes that is how Uranus expresses. But just as often, and today this is the more relevant expression, Uranus arrives as internal clarity of such sudden completeness that it makes a decision or a direction impossible to avoid any longer. The disruption is cognitive and emotional rather than circumstantial. What gets disrupted is the story you have been telling yourself about your situation, the comfortable ambiguity you have been maintaining, the version of your desires that was slightly edited to fit what felt realistic or safe. The Uranian clarity does not negotiate. When it arrives with a quality of knowing that your previous deliberation did not have. You suddenly know what you want, or you suddenly know what you no longer want, which is equally powerful information. You suddenly see a situation or a relationship with a precision that the previous days and weeks of consideration had not produced. That sudden knowing is not impulsive. Impulse is emotion moving quickly. The Venus-Uranus clarity is something different. It is awareness arriving at a conclusion that your system had been working toward for longer than you realized, delivered in a single moment rather than gradually. There are specific things you may notice today or in the next several days as this alignment builds and moves through your experience. Unexpected thoughts about changing direction. Not vague restlessness, but specific and directional thoughts about a different path, a different arrangement, a different way of orienting your time and energy. These thoughts may feel surprising given how settled you thought you were on your current course. The surprise is part of the signal. The thoughts are arriving because the Venus-Uranus energy is opening a frequency that your ordinary planning mind does not regularly access. The frequency of what you actually want underneath the edited version of your desires that fits neatly into the current structure of your life. A sudden loss of interest in something that recently felt important. A goal, a relationship dynamic, a commitment, a version of yourself that you have been working to maintain. One morning you wake up and the energy that was animating your investment in it has simply departed. The interest is gone and the absence of it is clean, not tortured, not accompanied by the grief that usually attends genuine loss. The loss of interest is Uranus completing a circuit that had been running on momentum rather than on genuine current. When the current stops, the momentum cannot sustain the appearance of aliveness indefinitely. The urge to break routine. Uranus in contact with Venus specifically targets the routines and arrangements that have been structuring your relational and aesthetic life. The ways you habitually spend your time, the patterns of engagement with the people closest to you, the automatic responses that have replaced genuine choice in the areas Venus governs. The urge to break these routines is not immaturity or avoidance. It is the Venus-Uranus energy pressing on the places where genuine aliveness has been replaced by habit, and the pressing is doing useful diagnostic work. People acting differently around you. Others are moving through their own version of this activation, and the result is that social dynamics are shifting in ways that may be visible in the behavior of the people in your immediate environment. Someone who has been predictable becomes less predictable. Someone who has been distant makes unexpected contact. Someone whose interest in you felt settled shows you a new dimension of that interest, or reveals a revaluation that has been happening beneath their surface. The Venus-Uranus field is not personal to you alone. It is running through everyone in your life simultaneously, and the behavioral changes you observe in others are as informative as what you are experiencing internally. Messages or opportunities appearing from unexpected directions. This is perhaps the most practically significant expression of Venus-Uranus energy. The opportunity that does not fit the map you are operating on. The connection that arrives through an unusual channel. The offer or invitation or piece of information that presents itself without having been sought and that points toward a direction you had not fully considered. Uranus governs the unexpected in part because it operates outside the planning mind's categories. The opportunity you were planning toward will arrive through the channels you prepared for it. The Uranian opportunity arrives through the channel you did not think to prepare. Moments like the ones described above, when they cluster together, when several of them occur in close proximity within a short period, these mark the beginning of a new timeline. That language is not mystical. It means simply that a sequence of events has been initiated that, if engaged with consciously, leads to a different trajectory than the one you were on before the sequence began. Timelines do not shift because of one dramatic event. They shift because of a series of small recognitions and responses that collectively redirect the direction of forward movement. The Venus-Uranus alignment creates the conditions for exactly that kind of sequential reorientation. The risk in this energy, the way it fails to produce its indicated results, is through the response of resistance. Uranus does not respond well to resistance. When the sudden clarity arrives and the first response is to explain it away, to rationalize the loss of interest as temporary, to dismiss the unexpected thought as impractical, to ignore the unusual opportunity because it did not arrive through the expected channel, the energy moves on without you. Uranus rewards awareness and responsive engagement. When you recognize what is arriving and meet it with genuine attention rather than defensive habituation, the energy has something to work with. When you resist, it finds expression elsewhere and you are left inside the structure that the disruption was trying to update. Attention to intuition today is not a soft suggestion. Under Venus-Uranus activation, intuition is running ahead of the rational processing and is in many cases more accurate. The feeling that arrives before the reasoning, the immediate sense of yes or no before the analysis begins, the body's response to a situation before the mind has categorized it. These are more reliable guides today than the deliberate weighing of pros and cons that your planning mind prefers. The analysis will follow and will be useful for confirming and refining what the intuition has already identified. But if the analysis is being used to override the intuitive signal because the intuitive direction is inconvenient or unfamiliar, something is being lost. Unusual coincidences are worth noticing today without immediately deciding what they mean. The synchronicity, the thing that connects two unrelated events in a way that your rational mind cannot fully account for, is not evidence that the universe is sending you a personal message. It is evidence that your attention is being drawn to a specific domain or question, and that drawing deserves your awareness. What is the coincidence about? What area of your life does it concern? What are the two connected events both pointing toward? The answers to these questions may be more useful than any direct interpretation of the coincidence itself. Uranus energy moves quickly. The window in which its clarity is most vivid and most available for conscious use is relatively short. The signal is clear today. Over the coming days, it will integrate into your awareness in ways that are less immediate and less urgent, and the initial clarity will either have been acted on and made real, or will have been absorbed back into the habitual patterns without leaving a visible mark. Some events in the sky arrive with obvious drama and announce themselves clearly as significant. The Venus-Uranus alignment tends to arrive differently. It comes quietly. It comes through a thought, a feeling, a message, a sudden loss of interest, or a sudden spark of it. It comes through a door opening that was not on your map. The quiet arrival does not indicate low significance. Some of the most consequential shifts in a person's life begin with a single moment of unexpected clarity that, in retrospect, was the hinge point everything turned on. Today may be one of those moments for you. The alignment building in the sky is one of the more genuinely catalytic configurations of this season, and the effects it carries, the sudden revaluations, the unexpected openings, the clarity that makes certain decisions impossible to continue avoiding, these are real and they are pointing somewhere specific in your life. Pay attention to what arrives today that you were not expecting. Pay attention to what quietly stops feeling necessary or alive. Pay attention to the thought that crosses your mind and will not leave. Pay attention to the direction your genuine desire is pointing, underneath the layer of what has felt practical or realistic or already decided. The shifts beginning today may reveal a path you had not fully allowed yourself to see before. The Venus-Uranus energy is not asking you to abandon everything and start over. It is asking you to look honestly at what your genuine desire is telling you and to take one step toward it rather than continuing to manage around it. The timeline can shift. It is already beginning to. What you do with that beginning is yours to determine.